Okay, now we are on chapter 2. And the title of chapter 2 is Why Don't We See Things All in the Same Way? Okay, so let me share my screen with chapter 2. And again, I'm getting this odd screen. So I'm going to stop sharing and fix the screen. Hi, I think I fixed the screen. Let me get. There we go. Larger than life. Okay. Why don't we all see things the same way? Well, let's find out. So here's what we're going to investigate. We're going to investigate the factors that contribute to why things we see differently. So we're going to talk about the definition of self-concept. Again, if you took a speech communication class 109, you would probably have learned about self-fulfilling prophecy, but we're going to add that to our knowledge. And concept perception, okay, how we perceive things accordingly to our five senses. And then describe the process of selection and factors that influences, because some things are more important, and that's the word salience. They have more importance to us. So if you heard a fire alarm now, it has more a salience to you than any other sound that you would hear at that time. Explain how interpretation influences our perceptions, how we interpret something. We may see somebody crying and think, oh, it's a sad day. Maybe they got married and they're happy. Determine how perception differs between people. Again, the name of the chapter, we see things differently. Describe 3 ways to better understand and reach the listener in an intercultural exchange. So that's going to be a real important issue there. And again, that active listener. So we're going to add some information about listening skills. And then I'm just gonna move this a little bit. Okay. Perception is the action of becoming aware and making sense of something through the senses and affects, okay, verbal and nonverbal communication. So the affects means it lasts for a longer amount of time than an effect. So for an example, if we have a war is an effect of a cause. So 2 disagreements on, who owns what land, and that causes a war. And then the affect is, the economy and casualties or deaths, etc. So perception is one of your 5 senses. Okay, so let's see if we know our 5 senses: seeing, hearing, 5 senses: smelling, touching. What did I miss? Seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, and oh my God, I totally forgot. So hopefully you're sitting there figuring out the 5th sense. Smelling. Did I smell it? Smelling? Seeing, hearing, touching, smelling. Okay, we'll have to find it. I'll come up with it in a second or two. Okay. Our perspective is our point of view, stand, or attitude on a given situation, action, or behavior. So we perceive things differently, again, every one of us, based on our frame of reference, that field of experience. We need to experience cultures with an open mind. So again, that ethnocentrism, we don't want to cement ourselves to. And understanding your perspective can lead to insight, to your awareness, and the ability to be conscious of events and stimuli for the here and now. Okay, and we're going to add to that self-concept. So much of what we know about ourselves, we've learned through interaction with others. So sometimes, let me just ask you right now. So self-concept, A, and you can figure this out. Give me one word. How do you perceive yourself? Second word, how do others perceive you? Third word, how do you want to be perceived? Now you're developing self-concept. Personality is flexible and based on our experiences, which are culturally bound. Our orientation influences our self-concept and how we view the world. So definitely, should those three words be the same? Should they be different? Maybe how you see yourself is interpreted by how other people see you. Okay. Okay, here's your table. It's also in your book. So identity orientations, gender identity, how we view ourselves in terms of gender. So it's not biological, and what our culture tells us it means to be a man or a woman. So again, in previous generations, we had gender roles um, um, based on biological sex years ago, but now we still maybe have gender roles. That doesn't matter which gender you identify with, you still have a role for that gender. How we perceive ourselves in terms of sex, including heterosexual, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual, although categories fail to respect our diversity. So we're going to talk about that, or you can see how that orientation is going to affect your intercultural communication. How we view ourselves of age identity, how we view ourselves in terms of age, and how someone our age should behave and look. So, if you're 65, should you be acting differently than when you're 25? Should there still be 40 bottles of beer in your recycling? How we view ourselves in terms of race and ethnicity, and how we view ourselves in terms of physical ability, height, weight, to changes across age to disabilities. Okay, so these are different identity orientations. And if you didn't know, what we're doing is examining your intrapersonal. So then we have a religious identity. And again, that's easy to understand. Class identity, we view ourselves in terms of class, including socioeconomic class. You may see yourself differently between more affluent towns, or maybe in an affluent town, but not as affluent as, the big mansion area. And then we have a national identity, so where your passport affiliation is. You have a regional identity, rural, urban, suburban, and you have a personal identity, how we view ourselves in terms of our own personal identity, which could in itself blend many of the previously mentioned ones. Okay, so if you had a personal identity based on all these others, and it's good to figure that out. So we are now on attitudes, beliefs, and values. Self is defined as one's own sense of individuality, motivation, and personal characteristics. It's not fixed. It's not absolute. It changes as we grow and develop in our lifetime. So your self, the self that is your inner, what you believe yourself to be. It might be different than the ought self, what I ought to be, what society tells me what I ought to do. Could be the same. But these are things that we do differently, and learn about ourselves between 18 and 25 and so on in ages, before college, during college, after college. Maybe there is a difference in yourself. So attitudes, beliefs, and values, and they sound similar, so let's go through it. Learned predispositions to a concept or object. I enjoyed the writing exercise in class today. Belief, convictions or expressions of confidence. This course is important because I may use communication skills I am learning in my career. Values, ideals that guide our behavior. Effective communication is important. So they took one idea and they showed you, what is my attitude about it? And the attitude is, more present day. And the belief is how, long-term effect to it. And values is a general perspective as you apply it to global or intercultural situations. I just want to check my time. Okay. So in this chapter, we're going to have a lot of words with self. So again, you know that test, it's going to make sure you understand the difference between self-concept, self-image, self-esteem. So self-image is how you see yourself. It includes your physical characteristic, okay? Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself regarding self-worth. You know, you've heard the term low self-esteem, high self-esteem. So when you look in the mirror, the first thing you should think of is positive. And then that's it. Positive. Instead of saying, oh, I got a pimple on my nose. Oh, you know, I look good today, even with that pimple on my nose. Okay, the looking glass self, which is definitely on your test. So learn what that is. Charles Cooley's looking glass self reinforces how we appear to others and how they view us, treat us, and interact with us to gain insight into our identity. So self-reflexivity, or reflecting on ourselves is another look into the mirror. So when you look in that mirror, as I said, process by which we see ourselves within cultural contexts. So when you look in the mirror, what is your self-reflexivity? What is looking back at you? So even if you're wearing an artifact, jewelry, you know, is that part of your looking glass self? Is that a meaning to you? Self-fulfilling prophecy is a phenomenon in which someone's behavior comes to match and mirrors others' expectations of him or herself. So again, self-fulfilling prophecy. I got my college degree sooner than maybe my neighbor, you know, and then you compare how you achieved that. So whatever you believe it to be, and you manage to adhere to that. So perceptions and cultural expectations. Pre-understanding, totally new word and totally important. It's like a prequel to a movie, is a set of expectations and assumptions from previous experiences that we apply to a new problem or situation. So you in high school, you may have hated math. Guess what? Pre-understanding. The minute you hit college, you're going to say, I hate math. So that's a pre-understanding. Conventions are customary forms and figurations of communications that members expect. So conventionally, after high school, you go to college. So in intercultural communication, conventions are always in place. The person, group, or audience we have a set expectations you need to consider. So you have an intercultural perspective of your conventions, and that's why it becomes difficult to communicate with other people. So this will be the end of part 1 for now, and then we'll pick up part 2 in a minute.